Hi, friend. Welcome to Her Evergreen Soul. My name is Amy Brady, and I help women to uncomplicate their spiritual life through a heart and body approach to spiritual growth. Walking with you on the path to spiritual formation is a passion of mine. I've been serving women for over 20 years as an author, speaker, yoga instructor, and now as a spiritual director. Let me ask you a question. Do you feel like your spiritual life is in a rut? Do you feel like your efforts to grow are never enough? Does it all just seem complicated? Then come sit with me a spell and let me share with you the unforced rhythms of grace. I want to invite you down the contemplative path into spiritual practices that ground your heart and free your soul, where you can live an integrated, embodied faith and learn how to keep your soul evergreen no matter what season of life you're in. Hi there, dear one. Thanks for joining me. I wanted to share a Substack post with you on this episode of the podcast that I wrote, I think it was last week. And it's a very simple one, but I have really enjoyed sharing things lately in my writing that I tend to find in spiritual direction sessions with directees, because I don't think that the things that my directees bring to me is particularly unique to them. I find that it's things that come up in conversations with my family, with friends, maybe with people who are in ministry, and with my directees. And so I think that it's stuff that is more common to all of us than we realize. And so I've really enjoyed kind of unpacking a few of those things via my Substack writing. And so I hope that this one will kind of resonate with you too. It's about me going into a church that was very, very different from anything that I was raised in or had been in as an adult, and how it challenged me. It challenged my ideas of church. And I began to find some things there that I believe gave me some insight into my own personal struggles with feeling comfortable in church and trying to decide the type of church that's right for myself and for my family. And I find that struggle with church, the struggle with finding a church, the struggle with, do I go to church? And if I go to church, what church do I go to? Do I get involved, or do I just come on Sundays? All of these things pop up in spiritual direction sessions a lot. And I know that my own family has been on a journey with this the last several years. And so I just felt like it might resonate with more people out there. And so I thought I would just write a little bit about my experience. So I hope that you find something in this that you resonate with and that perhaps can inspire or challenge you to reflect and think a little bit deeper about these things that we mull around in our spiritual heart. And please stick around to the end of the podcast. I have some really exciting information about my newest devotional coming out this November. What we've lost in the church and the virtue that could transform it. It's so simple, it may surprise you. Several years ago, drawn in by a newfound love of liturgy, I entered an Episcopal church on a random Wednesday morning. An odd time for church, I thought. The service was mysteriously listed on their website as their healing service. After many years in the non-denom world, I went in more than a bit curious and a little apprehensive about what healing meant to the Episcopalians. Not sure if my family was ready to make the leap to liturgy, I decided to go alone and check it out. As a minister's kid steeped in an evangelical, denominational ministry upbringing, I tend to give church an eyebrow-raised inspection. I am deeply indebted to that upbringing for the firm foundation in God that it laid for me, but I often see things others don't. Listen, I know there is no such thing as a perfect church, no matter how hard we try to create it or find one. What I'm saying is that there was something different and refreshing at this little church that surprised me, and I'm the better for it. There seemed to be no agendas during the service, just simple liturgy. Perhaps it is this awareness of agendas or crafting of services to yield certain outcomes that have made me far more of a church cynic than I'm comfortable being. I watch the way the leaders carry themselves. Are they humble, personable, real? Do they seem to have affinity amongst them, or is there a competitive spirit? Is there one person held in higher esteem than others? Do they have good relationships with other churches? Or do they espouse an us versus them view of God's other children down the street? Are they trying to impress me, or do they come as they are? It's probably unfair, I know this, but I've seen too much and experienced far too much disappointment in the underbelly of ministry to be able to encounter church any other way, sadly. I've long held a special place in my heart for traditional church buildings. Not the mega buildings of modern Christendom, but the humble church dwellings with wooden pews, high ceilings, stained glass, and even a cross hanging center view. When I was a little girl, I used to go with my dad to work sometimes during the summer. While he had meetings, I went on a grand exploration of all the spaces I wasn't allowed to be when church was happening. Splashed my feet in the baptistry, spoke from the pulpit, incredibly scandalous and rebellious for a little girl in an evangelical church in the 70s, played the piano, slipped in the pews, went to the balcony, plundered through the closets. I loved it all. It was my holy playground. What I didn't realize until a few years ago, sitting in a little chapel at a Catholic retreat center for my spiritual direction training, was somehow that little girl knew, in a way our soul knows, but our mind can't conceive yet, that I was in the presence of God. I had already received one of the greatest woundings of my life by that young age, and the church was the only place I felt I could be both alone and safe. As I entered this Episcopal chapel on a random Wednesday, it all came rolling back into my body and my spirit like a tidal wave of longing and innocence. The warmth of the wooden beams and pews, the palpable love without having said the first hello, the tender, safe holiness I felt back then. I sat on a pew close to the front, hoping it didn't belong to someone, and waited nervously but with an anticipation for the service to begin. It started promptly at 10 a.m., after the chiming bells overhead were done pealing. Out of my peripheral, not wanting to stare in assessment, I looked around, sensing that something seemed off. There were only about 10 of us there, 12 at the most. Where was everyone, I thought? Probably shouldn't expect too much if attendance is this low, my thoughts continued. I wonder if the rector, priest, father, whatever they call the guy leading, is embarrassed for the low turnout. I'm embarrassed for him. I better enjoy this because they may not have this service for much longer if attendance doesn't pick up. The rector, priest, father guy was in fact Father Tom, a warm-hearted older man with a welcoming presence. He began by picking up his guitar, not sure what's happening here, and began the service with far more joy than anyone on a random Wednesday should, and it seemed so genuine. Wait, is he leading? Just doing the music? Ah, he's doing both? Huh. As we prayed through the liturgy, me fumbling to find my place in the Book of Common Prayer, my eyes drifted down to the dates on some of the prayers and hymns. 1500 this, 1800 that. Wait a minute. Have people been praying these prayers and singing these hymns for hundreds of years before I showed up? How did I not know this before? Where has this treasure of timelessness and devotion been? Never have I felt so connected to the great cloud of witnesses Hebrews speaks of. Apparently, I am praying prayers that believers have prayed for hundreds of years before me, and the folks in the other pews don't seem bothered to pray the same things year after year. Nothing needs to be updated for modernity, changed, refreshed. How odd. Meanwhile, the pastor priest, whatever they call him, he doesn't choose the order of service or decide what series he will preach on. That's already decided for him? Interesting. So he submits to an already established pattern for the church year, and he's okay with that? Now I'm really intrigued. As we began the prayers of the people, I heard the elders around me praying for their community, their nation, their globe, for their own sins, for the healing of the sick, for the stewardship of creation. I couldn't remember a time in all my life hearing a prayer for the care of creation inside the walls of a church. I was astounded. We kept praying together, and it brought back memories of the responsive reading style from the church of my childhood. I loved responsive reading moments when we had them. Something about participating in prayer together, hearing all the voices in unison, was powerful enough to stir my heart as a child. It felt almost holy to hear voices raised in unison to our God. When we would join hands and sing at the end of the service, my heart would swell. The prayers in unison and the joining of hands in song made me feel like I was a part of something in a time when children were relegated to children's church on most Sundays. As the prayers of the people continued and led into communion, tears began to flow. Why am I crying? So strange, I thought. Communion on a random Wednesday. Does this mean it is possible for me to have communion weekly? I don't have to wait for the schedule anymore or the quarterly giving of the bread and the wine, grape juice. Communion had become so precious to me over the past few years, and I longed for it. Salty tears continued to trickle down my face. I had such a sense of curiosity about where this spring had lie within my heart. Was this just good old-fashioned church emotion? Perhaps, but it felt different. It felt holy. Why was this simple little service with so few people so captivating and so tender? Like a sun rising gently but steadily, I realized it was humility. That was it. I had been in the presence of humility. Not the kind you try to show, not the kind of humility you monitor and summon. It was the kind of humility that shines from humble hearts that don't even know they're humble. I realized that as I was living my busy life, there were 10 or so folks showing up on a random Wednesday every single week to come and pray and receive and give thanks and ask for mercy for others and themselves. They were eating the bread and drinking the wine and receiving blessings and sharing in them too. And no one seemed to know they were even there. And it never occurred to them to let anyone know. They weren't there for glory. They were there for God. No one was taking a selfie in the parking lot after the service, posting with a caption that read, "Just me on a random Wednesday at church." There wasn't even any fanfare on the church's website about these random Wednesdays that had so rocked my world. Liturgy was just life lived humbly. I found this same humility on Sundays too, where children were allowed in the service and even welcomed when they shouted out or ran down the aisle, with me holding my breath, waiting for the usher to come to the parents and awkwardly but unequivocally suggesting the nursery might be a better option. I found myself thinking, are they going to come get this kid? Boy, was I humbled when at the end of the service an older woman turned around to chat and said, Isn't it wonderful that the children feel so comfortable in the church that they can play and feel okay doing that? Wow. This mindset was so foreign to me. I realized that I hadn't quite understood Jesus when he said, "Let the little children come to me and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." Insert flushed cheeks. It makes me wonder if the current disillusionment with the modern church is just a deep disappointment in the lack of humility found in most of our churches today. We long for shepherds, not celebrities. We need guides, not gurus. We want peace, not pomp. And we are struggling to find it. As a family with an autistic child, doing church has not been easy. We have been back and forth with church attendance throughout her life, and I have to be honest, it's been hard on my heart because church was my safe place. Instead, it became the place that kicked off long afternoons of autistic meltdowns and me often sitting in a service with my hands trembling, wondering what lay ahead for us when we got home. That is, if we made it home before it all came crumbling down. I've been balancing this disillusionment the rest of you have, but also alongside the restrictions of when I can go to church and where I can go to church if I go with my family. And it's broken my heart. But I believe God knows exactly where I am in all this, and He knows exactly where you are too. Maybe you'll find a place that feeds your soul again. Maybe you won't. But nothing will separate you from His love. So maybe this is an opportunity to lean into that grace and mercy He offers even more than you have before. He alone is your bread and your wine. Eat, drink, and be satisfied, dear one. Talk with God about your grief surrounding church and leaders, all of it. Invite Him into it all. Allow Him to accompany you. We often spin inside our minds with the thoughts and worries about these things, but how often do we enter into a colloquy, an actual conversation with Him about it? The humble, gentle leader you long for is found in Him alone, and He is waiting and willing. I am so excited to give you a little peek into what's coming up with Evergreen Soul Wellness. I have partnered with Horatio Printing once again, and October 27th, we will reveal my newest devotional, Sacred Dust, a 25-day embodiment devotional. Sacred Dust gently invites you to meet God with your whole self, heart, mind, body, and spirit. Each day offers scripture, prayer, and a simple embodied practice like movement, meditation, or pilgrimage, creating space to slow down and notice God's presence. Whether on your own or with a group, Sacred Dust will offer you a fresh and life-giving way to experience embodied faith woven into the everyday rhythms of life. So Reveal Day is October 27th. I will also release a brand new podcast on October 27th on the Her Evergreen Soul podcast. And in that episode, I sit down with Polly Payne, founder of Horatio Printing, publisher of my newest devotional, Sacred Dust, and we share how we met, the winding journey to this book, and what it means to live with embodied faith. Together, we explore how seeing all of life as sacred brings healing, integration, and transformation to our daily walk with God. The release day of this devotional will be November 1st. So if you want to stay up to date on all the Sacred Dust news, you can subscribe to my Substack. Also, if you're in a season of discernment or you find yourself carrying questions in your heart about your faith, God, or about the church, and you wish for a safe space to unpack them, Spiritual Direction offers you just that, a gentle, prayerful companionship where you can listen together for the movement of God in your life. If you sense that might be a gift for you at this time in your life, I'd love to walk alongside you. And you can learn more on my website, evergreensoulwellness.com, or you can schedule a time with me using that same link. If you're a spiritual director in need of supervision or someone to help you unpack your encounters as a director, you can also reach out to me at amy@amybrady.com for more information. Thanks for joining me. Time with you is always a favorite of mine. Let's stay in touch. Follow the links in my show notes, visit my website, evergreensoulwellness.com, or join my Her Evergreen Soul Substack. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, keep your soul evergreen.